First up, I want to go across to Kanchan Gupta, Senior Advisor, Ministry of Information and Broadcasting with the Government of India, joining us. Kanchan Gupta, thanks a lot for your time. First and straight question is, why the decision to ban the movie? Because this is not really a call that the government takes very lightly or easily and doesn't really often go for something like this. But in this case, the government has decided to ban the links or block the links of this documentary in India. How would you defend that decision? Why?
Well, this was a decision which was arrived at after multi-ministerial consultation and input. The actual, the act of blocking content which sort of communicates whatever BBC has put out, either in an edited form or in full form. This was a decision that was taken under the emergency powers of the IT rules 2021, and it is perfectly in order. It is part of the law of India. The law lays down, this is the Intermediary Guidelines and Digital Media Ethics Code. So Rule 16, I think, of the IT rules allows the government to take an emergency decision to block. Now, technically, a block is not a ban because we have not banned the content or banned the producer of the content. It is just that access to the content has been blocked digitally. Now, the second part of the question which you have raised is about why it has been done. As I said, it was a multi-ministerial decision. The MEA was involved, the MHA was involved, the IT ministry was involved, and the INB ministry was involved. There was specific input taken from every ministry, and assessment was made, and it was found to be the BBC part 1 of the 2-part BBC series was found to be malicious propaganda. It lacked in objectivity, it lacked credibility. It questioned the authority of the Indian justice system. It questioned the credibility of the Supreme Court of India. It had the potential of inflaming passions, creating divisions between communities, and thus posing a law and order situation. We have seen in the past how purposeful misinterpretation, and I use the words carefully, how purposeful misinterpretation of the Citizenship Amendment Act, CAA, by both Indian media and foreign media caused a huge amount of grief in this country. There were disruptive protests, violent protests, and all because there was mischievous misinterpretation of CAA. Similarly, over here, we had malicious representation of unsubstantiated allegations. None of the allegations leveled by the BBC in its documentary have even an iota of evidence, or if there is any evidence, it was not produced by the BBC in what it calls a documentary.
But Kanchan Gupta, can I ask you, I'm sure you've seen the reactions that have come in on this blocking move. You're right, block is not exactly a ban.
My concern is not what people there will always be people who will try to exploit something for political purposes. So my concern is not about people who pretend not to understand the implications of such malicious propaganda. My concern is not about people who, even if they understand and appreciate the mischief potential of such malicious propaganda, but just to sort of, criticize the government, they are coming forth. My concern, in fact, government's concern, I am just stating government's concern. Government's concern is to maintain law and order. Government's concern is to maintain order. Government's concern is to ensure that institutions of the country, including the Supreme Court of India, are not denigrated by a foreign organization.
I get your point, but can I just still ask you that there are fears being raised of quote-unquote censorship? That in fact, one of the rules that you cited of the new IT law, that can lead to greater censorship if the government doesn't like what is being said.
No, you have not read the IT rules, and your guests, if I don't know who they are for this discussion, they should first read the IT rules. Section 16, Rule 16 of the IT rules lays down the action which the government can take on which specific conditions. It is a very detailed explanation. And if they have not read the IT rules, then I don't think they have a leg to stand on with their criticism.
So you're saying that the greater fears that one set of people are raising on quote-unquote censorship growing are unfounded?
I heard you the first time, Shivani. I will not walk that road. This is not about censorship. So, people with vested interests, and many of them, and again, I say this with, with responsibility. Many of them who are raising this bogey were involved with inflaming passions over CAA by sort of, amplifying total bunkum about the act, by broadcasting total bunkum about the act. People who had not read the act, they took to the streets. And similarly, people who have not read the IT rules are now sort of calling this censorship. This has nothing to do with censorship. If any government wishes to censor something, the process is different, the objective is different, and the outcome is different. This is action, emergency action under IT Rules 2021, Rule 16.
Okay.
So once again, I would request everybody to read that rule, to read the details of that rule, and how the government is empowered to take emergency action and the reasons why that emergency action is taken.
So can I ask you, Kanchan Gupta, is this now the final action on this series, or is this something that is going to be reviewed? Let's say this is a two-part series. Is it not going to be allowed at all, or final action, or something that is pending review now?
No, what action?
The fact that it has been blocked in India, is that a final action, or is this pending, or can there be a review on it?
Shivani, please read the IT rules. It will tell you what exactly happens once the emergency action has been initiated. The second part of the two-part series, I am told, I understand, will be broadcast tomorrow. And there is a certain obvious timing to the broadcast of that of the second part, and government will see, what is the content of the second part, and act accordingly.
Since you mentioned the timing, final question to you, Kanchan Gupta. Many people have said, including the Foreign Secretary at that time, Kanwal Sibal, that there was mischief as far as especially the UK Foreign Secretary report that has been cited in this BBC documentary, which became possibly the only new factor that came out. Everything else had already been discussed, debated, and as you said, it has been in Indian courts. What is your contention on the timing and the content of this documentary?
Shivani, first let me quickly run you through BBC's none too glorious background in this country. It was an imperial service, a centralized news dissemination imperial service. Before 1947, it becomes BBC World after 1947. But the purpose or the purposes of the BBC continuing to broadcast or report from India remained the same. They thought that the Union Jack may have come down, but the colony stays. Now, in 1969 or 1970 rather, the BBC World had broadcast another two-part series. The first part was called Calcutta and the second part was called Phantom India. And it was undiluted bilge. It was a drain inspector's report. The government of the day in 1970 had strongly protested and objected against the telecast after the first part had been telecast. And they had demanded that, or they had asked for BBC to be, to sort of not be so blatantly biased in reporting India. And it was a very unsettling, upsetting series. And yet BBC went ahead and broadcast the second part of that two-part series. And it is not a coincidence that both the parts they were broadcast on Channel 2, on BBC 2, and this time also the series are being broadcast on BBC 2. Now and then there was a back and forth, and finally again the government of the day in 1972 kicked BBC out of this country. BBC was actually kicked out of India. They were told to pack up and leave. BBC then sort of agreed to be more mindful of Indian sensitivities, Indian government sensitivities, and they were allowed back in. But nothing has changed between 1970 and 2022. I can give you a long list of intentional, brazen, malicious disinformation campaigns against India by BBC. What comes to mind most prominently is BBC's so-called documentary on Kashmir, in which they used footage from Chechnya. At that time, Chechnya, there was a conflict happening in Chechnya. They used Chechnya footage to claim that the government of India has brought in army tanks into the streets of Srinagar. So this is the quality of the BBC's reportage.
Okay.
This is their track record. This is the standard of their ethics. You mentioned the Foreign Secretary, the British Foreign Secretary in 2002. That is Jack Straw.
Yes.
We have seen Jack Straw in action. Jack Straw is the man who validated the WMD theory, weapons of mass destruction theory, which then led to the Iraq war.
Yes.
An entire country, an entire people, an entire civilization was destroyed on the basis of a bogus claim, which was seconded and legitimized by Jack Straw.
Okay. I think you've made your point.
A man with this kind of credentials dares talk about what happened in India. He has neither morals, he has nor does he have any ethics. And lastly, there are set rules and practices for all foreign missions in how they operate, what they can do on foreign land.
Yes.
An Indian mission in wherever, say country X, cannot decide one fine day we are going to launch an investigation into what happened over here.
Absolutely.
There were very worrisome riots in Leicester, in which people of Indian origin were under attack.
Okay.
Hindu temples were under attack.
Absolutely.
So the Indian High Commission in London did not decide to send in people to conduct an investigation over there. That is not how foreign missions work.
Yes, and what's the value of their investigation? What's the value of their investigation against the investigation of our own agencies?
Shivani, apart from there being no value, you cannot operate like this. The British High Commission in India in 2002 had no business to send a junior official who had never seen Gujarat, who didn't know where Gujarat was on the map of India, to quote unquote investigate, if at all that happened. But Kamal Sibbal, and I also recall that subsequently the British High Commission had shared, again, quote unquote, the findings of its investigation with other EU missions in Delhi.
Yes.
And the moment this became public, Kamal Sibbal, who was then the foreign secretary, had, conveyed government of India's extreme displeasure over something like this happening.
Okay, I leave it at that.
If you again, I don't want to name the platform, a thoroughly discredited platform which is known for publishing and broadcasting and amplifying fake news. And they have been found out to be amplifying fake news, broadcasting fake news. So Kamal Jack Straw appears on an interview on this platform. And if you go through that platform, all he says is, oh, well, I don't remember. I don't know exactly. This is what was talked about. This is what was said. People thought so. I mean, what are we talking about?
Okay. Kanchan
and lastly,
Gupta,
Shivani,
yes. Kanchan Gupta, I'm running out of time. Very quickly, please. Yes.
Just 30 seconds. Shivani, the British Broadcasting Corporation is not CNN News 18. It is not a private news channel. It is a public broadcaster which is owned and funded by the government of Britain. It operates under a royal charter. It has no business to do something which has the potential of damaging foreign relations of another country. It has no business to do something which questions the authority and the credibility of the judicial system of another country. And lastly, it has no business to disrupt in this manner ongoing contacts between people of both countries, because irrespective of politics, and I don't care who says what, but people are offended, and people are offended by the manner in which the BBC has run this absolutely uncalled for malicious propaganda.
I'll take that to our larger panel as well. Kanchan Gupta, I do appreciate you sparing your time and putting